Reality is that Trump in his first term was incredibly successful in putting a lot of extremists on the courts to the point where 1 in 5 federal judges is a Trump appointee.
Oof.
Yeah.
That percentage is too high. That is way too high.
Very.
Yeah.
And, and I mean, especially because you have people who've been put on for lifetime appointments that are not in any way competent or skilled as judges.
You want to name some names, Nicole? Let's hear them. Let's hear those judge names.
Amarillo, Texas seems to have one.
You are listening to New Hampshire Has Issues, and I am your host from the future, Liz Canada. I recorded this episode with Nicole back in June because when the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Northern New England comes to your office, you definitely try to record with her right away. We talk about things from the June context, and that means that a lot has changed since then. The one that I really want to flag for you right now is that the federal budget reconciliation, boring words, but we'll talk about it in the episode, we talked about that in a way that was like, it could happen. Well, it has happened. And so when you hear her talk about what the impact of that would be, we are in that now, friends. So thank you for listening. I am going to put in the show notes a link that if you live in Northern New England, Maine, New Hampshire, or Vermont, you can donate directly to Planned Parenthood of Northern New England towards the health care that the health centers deliver day to day. High quality, excellent health care that we'll talk about as well. If you would like to support the show, that link is there as well. Thank you for those who already do. And new episodes every Tuesday. We've got some great episodes coming up. So like, subscribe, share these episodes with your friends. Leave a rating would be great. And again, thank you for listening. I will pass it back over to the June version of me. Welcome to New Hampshire Has Issues, the podcast that dares to ask, does New Hampshire have more issues than Maine and Vermont? What do you think, Nicole?
Yeah, I'm going to do a Star Wars reference.
Oh, go for it. Let's hear it. Yes.
And say, can New Hampshire stay on target?
I remember what happened to that guy that says stay on target.
He lives. He does.
Stay on target guy?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
He...
Stay on target.
Yes, right. So are you the stay on target guy and I'm the one who gets, how does this?
Well, no, I think that, no, because they don't all die. But stay on target is about, like, it's the long view. You can't get distracted. You got to stay on target.
Yeah. It's so hard, though, Nicole. It's so hard.
I know, but you can do it.
We have had some wins in New Hampshire this year. It's been...
I mean, like, I keep joking because I wish I had recorded both of you the day after the election so I could play it back to you today.
Footage not found, thankfully. So I am your host, Liz Canada, and joining me today to talk about abortion rights, reproductive rights, and the landscape across Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont is the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, and in other words, my biggest of big bosses, Nicole Clegg.
So big.
You're the ultimate. You're the big boss. Nicole, thank you for being here.
Thanks
for
having me.
Chatting with me. I had heard you were coming to Concord, New Hampshire. I was like, can I grab her for a few minutes to talk about all the things in our state? So thank you for taking the time. I know you are so busy.
I love making time for you anytime.
CEO. I get to talk to the CEO today. It is incredible. I don't know how familiar you are with the podcast that is new to the scene, New Hampshire Has Issues, that I have created, but every episode I bring on a guest to talk about an issue in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
But you are a celebrity.
Oh,
because you are a CEO of Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, 3 states, which I think also have issues overall.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we can just talk today about, I don't know, the disaster that is our federal government and what might be happening in our 3 states. Are you okay with that?
I'm happy to.
Would you classify it as a disaster, or are there other words you might use?
Oh,
as a CEO, are there other things you might say? I say disaster because of my role, low level.
Yeah, okay. I mean, like, I think that we differ a little bit because some of us might be half empty people and some of us are half full. So I think it's a mixed bag. I mean, like, I would say despite all of the hard things that are coming to us, we continue to provide exceptional care to people who walk through our doors every day. And that's the win.
So there are health centers in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. I know this because I work here.
You
So
do,
I,
yes.
I do
Good
know some
confession
things.
there,
Thank
yeah.
you. Spoiler alert, listeners. But our 3 states are very different in our laws. And, this whole podcast is about
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. But Maine and Vermont are different from one another as well. I think people assume about New England in general that everything is super duper great. What are some of the, I guess, issues, but differences across the 3 states when you think of your role as the CEO of this organization? How do you deal with the differences? What are the differences that are out there? Talk to me about those things.
Happily. Well, first, I like to describe the northern New England as we have Maine and Vermont are the 2 sides of the toothpaste tube, and New Hampshire's the middle, and we're just going to squeeze all that toothpaste out of it.
I definitely feel squeezed, so that's very accurate. Great. Yes, definitely.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Like that we have sort of very homogenous states, and in some ways the issues that we are facing in all 3 are really similar. How do you deliver healthcare in a really rural part of the country? Right. How do you deal with an aging housing stock? How do we make sure that there is employment opportunity for young people and attract them to our states? Like it is interesting that like the 3 states are grappling with kind of the same big issues and yet coming to answers very differently. Vermont's approach is much more about government as a part of the solution. And, I would say Maine is a bit of a mix. And then New Hampshire's challenged in that space where the views are more complicated when it comes to what can government do and how can government answer in this moment. So there's that. And then on top of that, you have like across the board, a deep commitment to individual rights and decision making. Right. Like, I don't think that you would hear kind of a different perspective from a Mainer or a Granite State or a Vermonter. Like, they all care a lot about like, hey, I don't need you in my business. I don't want you making decisions about like when I'm going to start a family or who I'm going to, be in love with. Yep. Like that's my place. That's in my home. I mean, so like those are the great things. And those are the things that make it easy to, I don't have to change how I talk about the issues depending on the state that I'm in because we all sort of hold these values in the same way.
Privacy.
Yep.
I love my house. I love my community. I love my state. Like there's a lot of state pride in all 3 of those states. What about around abortion laws? The first episode of this podcast, I had Kayla on and we talked about abortion rights. Oh, thank you. Love a listener. But we talked about how
longtime caller, longtime listener, first time caller.
Yes. Longtime CEO, first time guest, medium listener. We'll workshop that. But Kayla was on and we talked about how folks might be surprised to find out we don't have the right to abortion in New Hampshire and that's something that we are, of course, advocating for and so forth. But what is it like in Maine and Vermont comparatively?
Well, let's start with Vermont, which
big winners,
passed a constitutional amendment, and codified reproductive liberty in their state constitution.
Yeah.
So,
Incredible.
They really have done some amazing work. I mean, it had to pass by 2/3 of the voters.
And it did.
It did.
And it did.
It did. And it passed in every single precinct.
Every single one.
Yeah. And that's incredible and remarkable.
And that was after Roe v. Wade was overturned or before?
Well, so the process for the constitutional amendment in Vermont takes about 4 years.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So the process had actually started, when Brett Kavanaugh was like not on the scene and there wasn't this sort of like immediate threat or worry about losing protections of Roe. It was sort of like, we're Vermont. We want to take, we're going to keep sort of advancing this cause. And lo and behold, it was incredibly necessary.
Yeah. 4 years for that process.
Yeah.
And it's something, if I'm remembering correctly, there's something about it, the language had to be the same throughout the entire process. That's a lot of work to get over the finish line. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's really incredible. This speaks to, we always have to have the long view. Like, I know that there's a desire to kind of like look at this election by election, But when you're talking about a fight for autonomy or basic human rights, you don't get to think about it in those short terms. You really do have to kind of like have a long vision. And so I credit the folks in Vermont for doing that. And it proved really valuable.
Necessary, yeah.
In Maine, we have something called the Reproductive Privacy Act, which was codified into law in the 90s. And so that essentially put into law the tenets of the Roe versus Wade decision, which is that everybody has the right to end a pregnancy. At the time, it had sort of a caveat around viability. That has since been addressed in the law to allow for, abortions later in pregnancy, which are necessary. And certainly I think since we've lost Roe, people are understanding more and more why those are so necessary.
Absolutely.
I mean, what's interesting too, the driver in the 90s for the state legislature in Maine to pass it was there was the same concern that the Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe, that they didn't know kind of how Sandra Day O'Connor and Kennedy, how these people were going to land.
Right.
And they felt like they needed to have these protections in place. Lo and behold, it didn't happen then, but, several decades later, here we are in a situation where it's really valuable to have that codified into state law. So those are important pieces. There's another, distinction. I mean, there's a bunch of other distinctions in the laws, especially when you compare them to New Hampshire. I think that the thing that I sort of always lean into and want people to understand is that people who are covered by Medicaid in Vermont and Maine have abortion coverage, but they don't have that in New Hampshire. Right. And not having your insurance cover an abortion, which is usually emergency health care, it's time sensitive, it's something that you need immediately, can push people into poverty and have a really devastating impact on their lives and the lives of their children. So, I mean, in addition to having the law in New Hampshire so that you could point to some protections, that doesn't get us fully there, right? We still need to be taking care of everybody to make sure that the right isn't just a right on the law books, but it's actually people can access it.
Right. It's more than just saying we sort of give you permission, you're allowed to do this, but actually making it accessible for everybody. Maine and Vermont, they're doing pretty well overall. But there's also differences. When my friends from Colorado, I lived in Colorado for 10 years, they know of New Hampshire as being in New England, totally fine, everything must be going well. And even people in state see maybe our federal delegation, which is extremely supportive of abortion rights and reproductive rights. Better than Maine, right? Yep. So how is it to work across these states where you have, in New Hampshire, our state lawmakers are, I will let you just fill in the blank however you would like in terms of where we are. But our federal delegation is really supportive and actively supportive, proactively getting out there and sponsoring positive legislation for reproductive rights. What is it like to work across states where that's not necessarily the case, especially in this Trump administration? What should we be looking toward in our federal delegations in all three states?
Well, I mean, this is where the battle line has been drawn, right? I don't want to diminish the fights that you have in Concord, the State House, are plenty and they're really important and, the successes are amazing. But when we want to talk about and think about, the rights of all Americans, the fight is in Washington, D.C. and it's in Congress or it's in the White House. And with the Trump administration, the things that he's doing, I mean, they're already taking action. We saw this through a federal family planning program called Title X, which, we had our funds withheld for New Hampshire. And those are dollars that help cover the cost of free care. Because a lot of people don't know that we provide care to anybody who walks through the door, regardless of their ability to pay. And
no matter what.
Correct.
Somebody shows up at Planned Parenthood, they're going to get the health care that they need, even if they cannot pay.
Exactly. And we rely on these funds to help us do that. They don't cover the entire cost, let's be clear, but it's an important contributor. So we've had those funds withheld under really bogus claims. We have lived up to every expectation of our grants. We actually got inspected right before the election and had glowing reviews. The department was this is incredible what you're doing. So they've done that. We now have budget reconciliation bill, which is this sort of special vehicle that Congress has where they can pass something just with the a simple majority. And in the Senate, this is really the only time that you can pass something with a simple majority. Every other thing requires 60 votes.
I think this is, I'm going to say this as respectfully as possible. For regular people who don't think about this all the time, which is almost everyone, folks might assume that the Senate is like whoever has more senators gets everything they want. That's not the case for the most part. It's usually, as you just said, 60 votes are necessary out of 100. So this, and the words are so wonky, but budget reconciliation, that's different where it is a simple majority. And so what is... Tell me more about that, because I think that's helpful for folks to maybe understand.
Yeah. And I mean, like, to your point, the Senate is designed to be slow and it's designed to be bipartisan. And that's why you sort of always have to have this 60 vote, because then you have to work across party lines. This one exception is budget reconciliation. And because we know there are not 60 votes in the Senate to pass a restriction on reproductive rights and freedoms or to target Planned Parenthood. They couldn't ever pass that in the Senate. So the only option they have is budget reconciliation. And so the bill that has passed the House and is now being worked on in the Senate includes language that targets Planned Parenthood and says we can no longer participate in the Medicaid program, which is, I mean, like, outrageous. You know, who bothers to target a particular healthcare provider and say that you can't do this? Like, this is the priority of Congress right now. The intention of the budget reconciliation bill this time is to extend these tax cuts that were passed during the first Trump administration, and they're set to expire. So the whole idea here is that they're supposed to be cutting spending. And, you know, that's why they're going after Medicaid program and food stamps and a lot of other assistance programs. But interestingly enough, defunding or targeting Planned Parenthood and kicking us out of the Medicaid program is going to cost the government $300 million. Yeah.
Just a deep sigh about that impact. And all of it comes down to a few lawmakers, enough lawmakers who hate abortion. Like, is that what it really is at the end of the day? Is that they're trying to... Yes. It feels like they're just trying to ban abortion, knowing they can't pass a bill that would ban abortion.
Exactly. I mean, so we are, you know, across the country, Planned Parenthood affiliates provide abortion care, and we are like a critical part of that, you know, healthcare network. If we all stopped providing abortion care, this defund wouldn't impact us. It is specific to the fact that we provide abortion. So it's, you know, like, in case there's any question about the motives here and what they might be claiming, it is all about, let's go after sort of the largest national healthcare provider and try and shut them down, because that'll be our best way of removing access to abortion in a state like New Hampshire.
And potentially in a state like Vermont. We talked about this in that episode with Kayla, where you have these constitutional amendments and protections, but the federal lawmakers who are anti-abortion are trying other strategies to affect those states regardless.
Yeah, they're not done. I mean, like, this whole like line about we're just giving it back to the states is just, like, you know, a complete lie. Because they've taken care of that. They have restricted abortion across half of the country. That is not what this is about. This is about going into states where it's legal and making it impossible to access there. And that should make people really mad.
It makes me pretty mad.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it makes a lot of people mad, because abortion is healthcare. It is not actually controversial. Every time I hear someone say that abortion is controversial, I'm like, call a timeout. I'm like, actually, it's not. It's wildly... Planned Parenthood is wildly popular. Like, folks want healthcare and they don't want the government to take it away. And this is a strategy that these folks are using in DC to impact states where folks probably assume they're safe and won't be impacted by their state lawmakers.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. Roe v. Wade was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, but the court decisions and fights in the courts aren't done. Like, why does this keep happening, Nicole? Like, why aren't they done? Shouldn't they be over now because they accomplished what they wanted to? What are we seeing happening in the courts across the country, you know, generally speaking? And are our Junes ever going to not involve worrying about the Supreme Court?
So what's that Hamilton song? You'll never be satisfied.
Ugh.
So the
I love it. First of all, thank you so much for bringing up musical theater. My favorite thing in the world is musical theater.
But did you want to associate it with
No,
anti-abortion
I did
extremists?
not want to. I did not want to bring it up with the awful anti-abortion things. But okay,
They'll
yes.
never be satisfied
Yeah.
until abortion is 100% illegal and unavailable in our country. So they are going to pursue every pathway, and that includes the courts. So I think, like, that's the reality, is that if they can't pass an abortion ban in Congress, they're going to try and do it through the courts. And it doesn't necessarily it's not going to look you head on. It's going to be something sneaky, which is like, well, let's call into question the medications that are involved in a medication abortion. Even though they're incredibly safe and have been used for decades around the world, they are now going to sort of like use junk science and make up things to try and claim that, they shouldn't have access to that. So that's like an active court case right now, where there's a direct threat on medication abortion, which is like the majority choice for people. So it really is that they won't stop. And so we won't stop, right? It's like, we're going to see it in Congress, we're going to see it at the legislature, and we're going to see it in the courts. And part of it is death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? It's to just exhaust us, deplete us in, any way possible. But, we are a resilient group. Like, they come at us one way, we move to the other. And, they certainly have had some wins, but we're still here. We're still providing care.
Yeah, the Supreme Court isn't changing anytime soon. And so the battles will obviously continue. There have been folks who've asked, like, do we have wins? Where are our wins at the federal level or in the courts? Like, does that happen, or are our wins different than that?
Well, certainly you've had wins in New Hampshire.
We've had some wins.
And we have wins in the courts. And, sometimes it's surprising when it's like a Trump-appointed justice that is like, this is so outside of the realm of, normal law. We're not going to accept this. We'll see the challenges to mifepristone, which is one of the pills that's a part of a medication abortion. We could win there in the courts. Now, the challenge is, like, we win in the courts. We have RFK, who wants to sort of dismantle the FDA and put on people that aren't scientists who might be willing to rewrite the FDA drug rules for mifepristone. So, it's a bit of a whack-a-mole. Like, we might knock it down here, and then we're going to have to go and fight it over here. We'll see what the Supreme Court does this session. There are some cases that are before them that have to do with access to reproductive rights and Planned Parenthood in particular. So we'll see where they land. We do have wins, and we're winning in popular opinion, like overwhelmingly. And I think that we've had wins during different elections, but people, the way people vote is complicated, and if we have a straight up question about abortion, it's going to win. But when it's about a candidate, it's not as simple as like, well, they're pro-choice or they're anti-choice. The one thing that we do know is that when Trump was running this time, his staff sat him down with a memo in October and said, if we don't modify your position on abortion, you're going to lose. And that's when all of a sudden he started to, tweet or Truth Social or whatever it is about how he would veto an abortion ban. And,
I remember that.
Elon Musk all of a sudden started spending millions of dollars online in ads targeted at young people to confuse them about his position on abortion. So they know it's a losing issue. Do I wish that they knew it enough? So we'll have to probably teach him this lesson again, next November. But there are wins. And, and I say this a lot to staff, especially the staff in the health centers who, they're like so frustrated. They're like, what do we do? What do we do? And how do we show our defiance? And I, I'm like, your acts every day of providing the high quality, non-judgmental care that you do is an act of defiance.
That's absolutely right. They are providing life-saving care, excellent health care, reliable care where a patient can go in and know I am getting the best health care I possibly can. And that matters more than me showing up at the State House in my little suit and tie. Like
Well, don't undersell yourself.
Yes, but it's also like that is why we do the work that we do, is because we have,
Yeah.
we're fighting for the health centers and for the providers at the health centers and the patients. Nicole, you always do a really great job for the staff to offer us glimmers of hope and optimism and sort of forward-looking direction. If I'm listening to this podcast and I'm feeling really bummed out because like the Trump administration and this budget bill, all these things are happening, what is the hope you see out there for our 3 states, or dare I say, the country, if possible?
This will pass. It will pass. It's going to require us all to stand up and take action and, speak out for what we care about. But, actually just communicated this to staff because, next week is the federal holiday of Juneteenth, right? And you think about this incredible journey for, one, eliminating slavery, but then also civil rights. You have to take the long view. You cannot just think about like this moment in time. You have to sort of look at like, how am I going to get to, that arc of justice? And, we like good stories, right? You're a storyteller.
I love a story.
We want a narrative. Yes. And so we always try to put the narrative together. So it's like this one big thing happened. Like Luke destroyed the Death Star. And that's what got us through,
I love the Star Wars reference. This is very exciting. Okay.
But that's not what the real story is, right? It's thousands of little actions. It's the protests that we all participate in. It's the calls that we make. It's the conversations that we're having. That's what really tips the scales. And so I totally understand. It is easy, especially if you just want to scroll, to get lost and feel so overwhelmed by what is happening in our country. And, I would say focus on the thing that you care about, speak out, show up, do the things. It will add up. It will make a difference. And the reason why I so fundamentally believe that is because we've seen it happen so many times in our history. We know that this is what happens. Crazy thing is, there were a lot of people who voted for Trump who love Planned Parenthood.
That's so mind-boggling. For me, someone who works at Planned Parenthood, like it is really mind-boggling because it seems so like a disconnect. Yeah. It feels like a disconnect.
Yeah. And so it's our job to connect the dots. Yeah. It's help them to see that your vote here, and maybe you were mad, maybe you want to change, maybe, it's a symptom of distrust. That wasn't the path. If you love what we do and you want to protect what we do, it's a different path to get there. And I do fundamentally believe that that's what's going to get us through, 4 years. 4 years is a blip in our history. And I know I don't want to say that in a way that's cavalier to the people who are really getting hurt right now, because there are lots of people living in fear and like afraid to leave their homes. And that is a travesty. But I do think we will organize ourselves. And you're seeing that, right? Like you're seeing more protests and more action. That's what it's going to take. And it's going to take a lot of it for us to get to the other side. But we will get there.
I'm going to believe you, Nicole, because I am, you said earlier, half
you don't have a
empty,
choice.
half full. Right. I have to do that. I have to believe you on this one. If there was one thing you would have someone do right now, because there's rallies and protests and calls, like what's the one thing you think everyone should do or most people should do if they care about abortion rights?
Talk about it. And talk about it online, talk about it with their friends, make this a normal part of the conversation. Even though like we are talking so much more about abortion than we ever have in history, it's still shrouded in a lot of like shame and stigma. And, people can be afraid to like, ooh, do I bring this up? Are we allowed to talk about this?
Say the word abortion.
Yeah.
It is
the more
okay.
we talk about it and treat it as healthcare and talk about like these are normal human decisions that people make in their lives, the better off we are. And I'm going to put an asterisk next to it though and just say that men have been left out of this conversation, and rightly or wrongly. Like I think that in some ways the movement for abortion rights came out of the women's movement, it brought women together and sort of made them activists and feminists. It did, and there was power and like incredible progress as a result of that. It didn't create, we haven't successfully created space for men to come into this conversation with us. And we do need to do that. They need to see how this connects to their lives in the same way. And so I would say talk about it, and then talk about it with your brother, talk about it with your colleague or neighbor. Like, let's not be afraid of bringing up this conversation and saying, hey, this really matters to me. And I don't know if you've thought about it, but can we have a conversation?
Welcome, men.
Yeah.
We are here. Come on over.
Yeah.
We're delighted to have you here. I know we talk about reproductive rights and abortion with our two sons, our two kiddos, and I think they have actually started talking to me about, they don't say the word stigma, but they say like, well, Liz, you work at Planned Parenthood. I can't tell people where you work. And I'm like, oh, you already see that in middle school. Like they're already sort of feeling that sort of, abortion is something we can't really talk about. And we have to dismantle that perspective. We have to address that head on. We can't shy away from it, or else the cycle continues.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show, men. We're here to invite you in to the conversation.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm also a parent of a son, and I think most of the time he rolls his eyes because he's like, Mom, do I have to hear about this again? But, like that is like my responsible parenting.
Exactly.
It's like you have to understand and see what this means for your mom and for the other people in your lives who depend on this care.
Absolutely. That's our jobs as the parents of the boys, to help them grow up to be the best men they can be. Okay, you do get to go to all the health centers, Nicole.
I do.
Can you give me just like a little flavor of what you've seen out in the health centers and what they're doing out there in their health centers?
I mean, well, first of all, they're lovely. We are intentional about the space that we create. And, part of that is we want to communicate to everyone who walks through our doors their value, and they are important to us. And so if you walk into any of our health centers, they're like bright and cheery and colorful, and there's fun music on. I mean, although like it depends on the health center what the definition of fun music is, but there's a lot of yacht rock out there, I'll be honest.
So not the same as like show tunes. Okay, well, we all have our different opinions on what excitement is. Okay, yep.
So you walk in and you're immediately welcomed into a space, and our patients say this all the time. I've never been listened to the way I've been listened to here. I've never been treated with respect. Like, that breaks my heart, really, when you think about somebody who might be in their early 30s who has had, 3 decades of experience in the healthcare system, and no one ever really asked important questions for them. We provide all kinds of care, and I think that surprises people. We, recently did a very fun campaign around menopause care.
I love this campaign. We can come up with some jokes right now about it, because it's my favorite thing. If you ever returned a video to Blockbuster Video, it might be time to start thinking about perimenopause.
Or what about the mixtapes?
Yep. If you made a mixtape for someone you liked, there's that one. If you had the slap bracelets.
Yes. Yep. Or jellies. Did you ever wear jellies?
I personally did not, but I had a lot of friends who did. Yes.
But and that was a really fun campaign. It was, again, about destigmatizing something that, like, for, since medicine has existed, has largely been ignored, and sort of like, oh, this is an experience that you just have to live with. We often see people with really challenging periods, or, might have some other underlying condition that's causing that. And they will just say, every doctor I went to just told me I had to just deal with it. That's just part of it. That's just what you have to accept.
Oh,
and,
my God.
So like that, the menopause campaign and that kind of care that we provide, where folks are listened to and given an opportunity to like talk about their options and how can they, alleviate some of the symptoms, it's really great. It's really fun. And, our clinicians and the health center teams are amazing. We provide award-winning care. There's a survey that's called Press Ganey that evaluates healthcare providers across the country. You want to guess what our score is?
An A. Wait, how are we doing scores?
Yeah, well, I mean,
yes.
It's a number, but it's definitely an A.
So,
but
I'll say like 94%. Is that what we do?
Higher.
95.
Higher.
96.
Higher.
90. Oh my God, 97.
That is it.
A++. I mean, that's an A++.
Yeah,
really.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That is so incredible.
Yeah. And my life and some of the privilege that I've had in my life, like, I've not been in a time when I didn't have health insurance or I didn't have options to get care. There are lots of people that don't have health insurance and don't have the ability to enter into the healthcare system, and to walk into a warm, welcoming space, be treated with respect, and get some of the best care in the country it says something about your value as a person. And that, I mean, like, I couldn't be more proud to be a part of an organization that does that.
That's the hope we need to end
There
on
you
right
go.
there,
I'm like,
Nicole.
did I
That
fill
is
your cup?
You did it. You did it. You nailed it. Nicole, thank you so much for taking time and chatting with me about this.
That's
And
so good to see you.
for doing this work and leading the organization and in maybe the hardest time possible, like given the landscape nationally, what we are facing, not just after Roe fell, but now, like in this current administration, it's like all the odds are against us and you keep steering the ship and it's going forward.
Do I stay on target?
You do. You do. And you are going to blow up the Death Star, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, well, I don't have to be the one to blow up the Death Star. I just want to help Luke get there, right?
Do you want to be Han Solo who flies in and helps?
Let's go, kid.
Yes, that, you know what? That can be, you could be Han Solo. Halloween costume
God, did I have,
idea.
Well, Princess Leia has always been my jam.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When I was young, she was the first badass, like, female lead that, like, just owned her space. I mean, like,
Totally.
she's this tiny little woman and she, like, owned her space and, like, was fearless.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, I've been in love with her forever.
She is such a great character overall, like, just powerful, independent, sassy, snarky. She is
unafraid.
Unafraid, yeah.